I'd like to call to order the August Ordinance Committee meeting. Have any public comment?
Yes, we do.
Evelyn's first.
I don't have to be first, I'm just on the list.
Really?
Thank you,
I
sir.
have to be first.
You look better. You look right that night.
Okay, Evelyn.
All righty.
Billy.
Hey.
Keep your... Yes, ma'am.
All righty. Thank you all. Evelyn Shotwell, Chincoteague Chamber of Commerce, 6733 Maddox Boulevard. Speaking on behalf of the Chamber, I would just like to let you all know that the Chamber Board of Directors supports the 10% allocation of meals tax revenues for the promotion of tourism via the new ordinance with the changes that you all are going to be looking at tonight, I think in item 5. Or whatever item it will be. And then that the Chamber also supports half of that allocation be directed to the Chamber for promotion of tourism via this new town ordinance. And I've given you some supporting documents to go along with that, to look at your leisure, or to look at before you all make the decision, or whatever recommendations you would forward on to council. The graph in there does show how we spend our meals tax funds that we receive from the town. We're so grateful for those. And this gives you a proposed 22, takes into account what we've already spent and what we propose to spend by the end of the year for this year, how that money goes out. So you all have seen this before in various forms. I let you know every year what we do with the money, but this is just a good way for you all to see again how it's used. And then the longer document goes into a little bit of detail about how we use it as well and what we need those funds for. So just wanted to just let you know that the Chamber does support those changes that you all are going to be looking at. And then I have another little thing I want to point out. I have an answer for you all, and see if you have the question. Virginia's only resort island. What's the question?
Where's Chincoteague, Virginia?
What is Chincoteague Island, Virginia? Jeopardy tonight at 7:30. We're running a commercial, so we've got a commercial going with 13 News Now. That's part of some of our marketing money that we're using now with the ARPA funds, and that started this week. So Jeopardy tonight is supposed to be a commercial for Chincoteague, so watch that. The Pony Swim video now has 6 million views, and 15 million people have been reached with that. So great stuff. We've had other news agencies pick it up. There was a website that used it, BerkshireEagle.com or something like that, used it in a great story for Chincoteague. So again, thank you all for the opportunity to help with Pony Swim and be a part of that and help promote for next year. Still working on trying to get Pony Swim on the cover of the Virginia Travel Guide for 2025. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Pat?
I have only one extra copy. Do you want? I can give it. First, I want to thank the Ordinance Committee for putting on the agenda the last item, which I had spoken about at the July council meeting, looking at the possibility of creating some new ordinances for burning laws. As I spoke in a public comment at the July 5th, 2022 town council meeting, my neighbors and I have endured 7 months of a DIY demolition of an old house, accompanied by frequent excessive burning of the 6 or 7 large trees cut down and debris from the demolished house. I'm not here to talk about the owner of the property, but to ask for you to look at these events as a reason to consider more restrictive burn ordinances. Most neighbors on this island would not burn their trees and debris in this excessive manner, but it is the exception that causes the need for more careful burn laws. This is not a neighbor burning an occasional pile of leaves or small branches or limbs. This was frequent, large, often daily, smoky fires in 4 open, unscreened metal containers that did not contain the flames or the sparks in a yard filled with dead vegetation, for months without a water source and often left unattended. There are houses close to this property on 3 sides, including vacation rental properties, and this is true throughout the island. We live in neighborhoods, not open fields, and what one neighbor decides to do with their fires affects the whole neighborhood. The issues are safety, health, and quality of life. The attached suggest model from the Virginia DEQ addresses these issues. The fire must be a minimum of 300 feet from an occupied house or have permission from the homeowner. The fire must be attended. The fire must have prior approval from an authority of the town. The fire must be contained, and other things. As the photos I have attached show, the containers used did not contain the fires or the sparks. I understand that it is impossible to measure smoke the way noise can be measured. I understand that it is impossible to measure, I already said that, but an ordinance can limit the number of fires producing smoke at the same time. Smoke is unhealthy in excess, particularly when a homeowner tosses hazardous materials on the fire. It should never be so heavy that visitors renting properties nearby have to leave, as happened in my neighborhood. I understand that creating and enforcing such regulations is not easy, but without increased regulation, we have the possibility of my neighborhood and others on the island being disrupted or burned or devalued by one neighbor who simply doesn't give a damn. Thank you.
Okay, Mayor Leonard.
Good evening, y'all. John Leonard, 6220 Leonard Lane. Today I come as John Q. Citizen, not the mayor. I don't know if y'all are aware or not, but my dad had an agreement with the town to have an open burn pit. Now, whether or not you guys can write it into the ordinance that only burning can be allowed on agricultural land, because as I know it, we're the only ag land designated on the island. So to me, it seemed like it would be a simple added, little piece of verbiage that, ag land is not covered under this burn ordinance. And I feel sorry for Miss Pat. I mean, the next door neighbor burning building materials would be terrible. I can't imagine that. But where our burn pit is located, we are at least a half a mile from any structure. And I understand about the prevailing winds. I try not to burn when the wind's blowing toward Wildcat or towards east side or that way. The wind's got to be a certain direction most time. I want it blowing northwest or something, so it's blowing out over the wildlife refuge in the ocean. The majority of what gets burned up there is tree limbs and brush and farm stuff. So that's the only thing that concerns me. When I read the ordinance, I was like, holy smokes. Because right now I've got a lot of trees with beetle damage and whatnot. I mean, I know they're clean burn stuff, but we just have a lot of brush and whatnot that we clear, that we burn from time to time. Now we do call in to Chief Fisher and say, I've got stuff to burn. He'll send an officer up there. They look at it, say, okay, burn it. And then we have to call 911 to say, fire's out. Sometimes we attend to it. Sometimes we don't. Every now and again, we've had a fire up there that's been so large that they've gotten calls from the mainland. That was cone ants when they burned cone ants down. So if y'all see fit, I would appreciate it if you could exempt ag land. That's it. Thank y'all. Appreciate it.
Okay, before we do the agenda adoption, we'd like to consider moving the last item on this agenda, consider the burning ordinance, and move that up to the number 1 spot.
So moved.
Second. Okay. We have a motion and a second. And all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead with that inclusion, to go ahead and do the agenda adoption. Do we have a motion to accept that?
So moved.
Second. Move in second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. This time, we're gonna turn it over to our town manager, Mr. Talbert, if you could go over the burning ordinance.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we're all, and I have an opening memo here, but I think we're all aware of the conditions that prompted this. During the, what Ms. Farley mentioned as being the burning operation that went on next to her property, Mark Badden, the building inspector, was aware of that. We did contact DEQ, we contacted, the authorities we thought would want to know and would take action on this. We were told that if there were no hazardous materials being burned, which Mark went and inspected that actually several times, then they really weren't interested in trying to regulate it or stop it. And I know what Ms. Farley said as far as open, and we did ask the property owner to put screens on top, and he was burning in 3, I'll state it as homemade furnaces, for lack of a better term. They were made out of old oil tanks. They had chimneys on them. We did ask him to screen the top of the chimneys to keep the embers and sparks in, which he did without complaining. But from everybody we talked to about this, that's not considered open burning. There's actually a definition we'll get into here later on what open burning is that will state that. And I guess you can, taking a look at the furnaces, you can make your own determination whether it's open burning or not, and whether they actually contain materials in the flame. So I guess that's a matter of opinion. But in any event, Mark found for us sections of the Virginia Administrative Code which deal with burning, and I've copied some of them here. I'll skip down to the part on that contains the model ordinance, because this is all regulated by the Virginia Pollution Control Board, I believe it is. And what they do is they go through their regulations, but for localities that want to further restrict burning, they provide a model ordinance. And the model ordinance repeats a lot of their regulations that are in effect already. What it does do that their state code doesn't, that I see, is it puts some distance limitations on there, as Ms. Farley referenced. You cannot burn within 300 feet if you adopt this ordinance. Now let me back up and say, if you adopt this ordinance, you can adopt it as is without any fuss or muss. If you want to change anything, it has to go before the board, the Virginia Pollution Control Board, to be approved. And in general, they tell you that if you want to make something more restrictive, they will approve it. If you want to make it less restrictive than the state code, they're going to say no. So basically, in the model ordinance, the only things that we can change are the things in parentheses, like you see up there in the first sentence. This ordinance shall be known as the, and in parentheses, local jurisdiction, which we would put town of Chincoteague. Those are the types of things we're allowed to change. We are not allowed to change any substantive regulations contained within the model ordinance and without the board's approval. Basically, the model ordinance, again, repeats a lot of what the state code repeats. The things, after reviewing them several times, are things that I did see in here. And by the way, the model ordinance only references open burning. And I've got the definition here. Open burning means the combustion of solid waste without 1, control of combustion air to maintain adequate temperature for efficient combustion. 2, containment of combustion reaction in an enclosed device to provide sufficient residence time and mixing for complete combustion. And 3, control of combustion products and emissions. That's pretty much the definition of a furnace. That's what a furnace does, is control those 3 items. So anything without these 3 items is considered open burning. And this ordinance only deals with open burning that I can see. It doesn't really address, other than if you were burning hazardous materials, you can't do that at any time because of the emissions. Yes.
So were you saying that this doesn't include what's referred to in here as a special incineration device?
That device, and I had the link, I was not familiar with that, but when I clicked on the links there that they give you there, that is a device which actually blows a stream of air across the top of the open pit to help combustion. So that is still open burning.
Okay.
It's just a device that you can use in an open pit which will accelerate the combustion process. That's what I got from there.
So, looking at these pictures here, I'm going to go back to, it's probably been every bit of 20 years ago, got called out to a fire down at Bunker Hill, on the road, Bunker Hill area. And an open fire, wasn't incinerator or anything like that. And if you could think of it, it was in that pile. And brought a fire truck down there, shut it down immediately. You cannot burn this, you can't do this, you can't do that. So that's what leads me to this. What I'm looking at right here looks just as hazardous as what I looked at in that pit 20 years ago, or in that fire 20 years ago. My thing of it is, there's a lot of people, I've got one myself, Dolly's probably got one, you might have one, a fire pit in the backyard. Okay? I'm burning clean wood.
Sure.
I can tell you I'm burning clean wood. I might be burning something else.
Right.
But, honestly, people should be honest, burning clean wood. I get the feeling that this man right here was burning everything and anything he could shove in there.
And that's the reports we initially got. And to be quite honest with you, I can't remember if, Mark did inspect that several times, but after the first time, he was made well aware of what he couldn't burn. And the subsequent trips that we took down there, the reports I got back from Mark is he couldn't identify anything that was not eligible to be burned.
If you're burning something recreationally, like we sit around our fire pits, you're not causing a nuisance to anybody.
Right.
If you're burning down to get rid of a structure, and basically that's what that is right there,
Right.
I think we got to figure out a way to separate that. Author's doing it the legal, right way. I'm assuming it's legal. It has to be. He's a half a mile away from anybody else or anything. Why can't we come up with some kind of ordinance that says if you want to do something like this, you've got to be X amount of feet,
Well, this model ordinance provides for that.
away from everything.
I'll say that I went down there and inspected that myself, and those furnaces were 50 feet from the neighboring structure. The closest one probably 50 feet or so.
30 feet.
30 feet. Okay.
I want to tell you
So
something.
they were very close.
Anybody who has been around a fire looking like that, you come within 30 feet of that, you're gonna feel the heat,
Right.
big time.
And I've used furnace with that lately.
Yeah.
The word to
As I
describe it.
That-
said, it's
yeah.
a matter of opinion.
Yeah, you're right. That's a matter of opinion. That right there looks like the most dangerous thing in the world. You don't know if something could have gotten in there that he didn't know about that could explode or anything like that. I think if we have it that you can't burn construction material or burn, to get rid of something like that within 300 feet, I have no problems with that. I'm not saying it because Pat's sitting here, but I'm going to tell you something. If I had lived next door to that, I'd be sitting right here every day.
Yeah. Agreed.
So,
Twice.
you had mentioned earlier that, what was it, the first set of regulations you're talking to have to come back to Virginia Pollution Control Board.
Yes.
And I guess I've been reading over this for a couple of days now. We may have something to consider regarding the Virginia Waste Management Board as well. Is that correct?
That I'm not sure of. Are you talking about burning trash and
Yeah.
sanitary landfills, of which we don't have on the island, are permitted to burn? I'm sure you saw in there that homeowners can burn things like leaves and stuff without an issue, but they can't burn waste or refuse in an area where there is a scheduled pickup of such items. And in town here, it would be trash. We have a bulk pickup once a month, and we even have brush pickup once a quarter. So I would call all three of those regularly scheduled pickup things, and say that those items are ineligible to burn in an open burning situation like we're talking here.
Where it says the burning shall be at least 500 feet from any occupied building unless the occupants have given prior permission, other than a building located on the property on which the burning is conducted. To me, that covers everything. I don't want to get into a situation where, I can't have a fire pit. Arthur can't burn like he's been doing, because he's been doing it, I would say very considerately, the right way. And then there's the other one here, burning shall be at least 300 feet from any occupied building unless the occupants give prior permission. But, we need to come up with something, and there's a lot of language in here, but come up with something that prevents things like this happening again, not because it's just also a nuisance, but man, the safety aspect of that is just horrendous.
They're hot. Those are some hot
Yeah,
fires.
I mean, that's just horrendous. I mean, that's just nuts.
I will say too that you'll see mentioned in here several times that if you're going to burn the things that are allowed to be burned there, they have to be burned on site. You can't take them to another site, which I think is what the mayor's talking about. He's an alternate site. A lot of times people bring those things in. It all doesn't originate from the site that they're using. So.
Yeah.
Well,
So basically, anything that we do come up with is going to as well be a supplement to any Virginia regulations that are already in existence. Is that correct?
Well, the way the lawyers have set this up, it will tell you that this is, any local ordinance is considered a supplement to the state code. But again, that caveat's there that if you're not going to use their model ordinance as is, they want to see it and prove it. And
Right.
in general, if you're making it more restrictive, they're going to approve it, and less restrictive, then it's not so much.
Right.
I don't know that they can say no or would say no, but they just told us up front that if you're making it more restrictive, it's pretty much we're going to do it. So if you decide to make some exemptions, I think we'll have to submit it for approval.
well, how can we? There is just so much language in here. Yeah, lawyers wrote it, of course, but so how do we? Here's another section: the burning shall be at least 1,000 feet away from occupied.
Well, that I think there are different circumstances.
Yeah, I see
when you
that
look
now.
at it.
Yeah. So how do we make it so that you can't burn within 300 feet of a residence when you're trying to demolish a structure?
Well, if I can make a suggestion, this
Please.
model ordinance, obviously, from what I'm hearing, you wouldn't want to adopt the model ordinance strictly as is. There may be some changes you'd like to make.
Right.
If you can communicate the changes to me, give me some time, I'll go through and see if I can tune up this ordinance to reflect what you all want to have in there and present it to you again for approval or for adjustments.
I would like that.
Yeah.
And can can you just have it, can you just bring us something without all this other?
What, and I apologize, what I started to do, and I just ran out of time, was to condense this down to bullet points,
Okay.
without all the legalese.
Yeah.
And given a couple hours, probably could do that and condense it down to bullet points so it's more easily understood. 'Cause,
There you
know,
go.
when you put the legalese in there, you gotta go back and read it again and say, well, hold on.
Goodness.
Because you miss one little word and it
I
changes the whole
know.
meaning.
It does.
I think you're gonna have a lot of bullet points still
Yeah.
in this document. I just, I had to read it 3 times to realize
know.
what I read it on the first line.
But if I know your concerns and what you're trying to accomplish, I think I can probably tune this up to read.
Well, I can
Read
definitely
out.
tell you my concern is I don't wanna see anything like that within, 300 feet at the minimum of a structure.
So you don't like the homemade furnaces.
I think that's awful, cause I think, I think the potential there for combustion, if something gets shoved in there that's, yeah. Or if you gonna have something like that, it needs to be something different than a homemade oil tank.
Distance from and I would go so far as to say, not necessarily occupied structure, but from any structure.
Any structure.
Any structure,
Distances we're thinking about, is 300 feet adequate?
at least.
Mhm.
Okay.
The bottom line is that it still comes down to human nature. You've got, and I'm not saying it because Arthur's sitting in the room, but you got somebody like Arthur up there with his family and everything and doing things the right way and considerate of their people around them within a half a mile. And then you got people that,
Well, not only that, but an area that's
Yeah.
that's set up. for
that's
it.
set up for it. And then you got stuff like this and maybe the guy, he might not have had the money to do what he needed to do, but it still comes down to you got to look out for the safety and well-being of the people that live around you, because you're going to end up living around it.
I think if the money was there, the whole thing could have been done and on a truck within 3 hours.
Yeah.
So I think if the money was already
Well,
spent.
more than likely for a little donation, the whole thing could have been done in about 3 hours anyway.
Right.
Mhm.
But
So we got less than or equal 300 feet from property or structure, no homemade furnaces.
And maybe a clause where it doesn't apply for agriculture areas.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
No ag areas.
That's an exemption.
And I can tell you because I was on the planning commission, we created that is the only ag area on the whole island.
Yeah, I remember.
We got a lot of crap over that.
Mhm.
If you don't believe it, I got a lot of waste, animal waste to prove it.
We'll take your
It's a
word.
literal
yeah, I
definition.
think you were, yeah.
But if you'd like, I can go through this and present this at the next ordinance committee meeting. In fact,
Yeah.
I'll even get it out in one of my regular emails so everybody can have a.
Yeah, I think it'd be easier to
Yeah.
explain to council too.
And
So by the time it gets here, it's ready to go.
I know it's covered with the rest of the ordinance about the type of things you can burn and not burn. Yeah, I just want to make sure that, looking here, construction waste and things like that. I mean, in these old houses that you're burning down, you got,
Yeah.
asbestos. You got a lot of,
There's bad stuff in some of them.
yeah,
Especially with amount of folks that have breathing problems and everything now. I mean, it's-
yeah,
Lead paint,
Yeah.
yeah.
PCB sometimes.
yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that we can
Yeah.
regulate it so that nobody has to go
Mhm.
through what those people down there had to go through.
Yeah, it's easy to explain.
Yeah.
Any other discussion on that? Okay, we're gonna move on to item number 2, which is consider the cigarette tax ordinance. Mr. Talbot.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as you know, Chairman Tar was here giving his last report. He made us aware of the fact that the county would be taking advantage of the new state law allowing localities to collect cigarette taxes. And when the county decides to do it, they can do it legally within the incorporated towns. The ordinance was, or the code was written, state code was written such that if the locality wishes, or if a town within a county, I should say, wishes to collect that tax instead of the county, they can do so. They can also collect that tax and allow the county to collect an additional tax. But there was some expressions by council that they would like to collect the tax and move the county. So I called Mr. Mason at the county and made him aware that we would be doing that, and he sighed and said, okay. But he was gave me all the information I needed to get this set up, and basically it's going to be a very simple process. We can adopt by ordinance and become members of the Chesapeake Bay Region Cigarette Tax Board. That's a mouthful, CRB-CTB. And basically that is made up of 10 existing members of that board, which are localities, some counties, some towns. 10 members of that. 9 of the 10 members collect the full or maximum that the state allows, which is 40 cents per pack, 2 cents per cigarette. One member of that board, which is the county of Accomack, only collects 10 cents. Everybody else collects the max. But being members of the board makes it very easy for us to collect the tax, because the board, which is run by the Northern Neck ANP or Northern Neck PDC, does all the work for you. They put out all the stuff, they collect the tax, they even enforce your ordinance, and for all of that, and they send you a check monthly. And for all that, they just take 5% off the top. And the way that's done is they take 5% of the total tax collected from all the members, and then they assign to you your portion. If we are 1/12 of the total cigarettes sold, then we would pay 1/12 of that 5% is attributed to us. We get the rest of the money, so it's even a little better than the actual 5%. In any event, it's a very simple matter of we need to have an ordinance, and we need to become members, sign the agreement to become members of the Chesapeake Bay Region Cigarette Tax Board. And basically, I spoke with the NNPDC's executive director last week, and we had a nice chat on the phone, and we think we can have this up and going and start collecting this tax by January 1. The ordinance, I talked to our attorneys that we have now across the bay, and they have taken a look at the ordinance. They have modified it and made sure it's correct, and they also modified the Cigarette Tax Board's ordinance, which was referencing some old codes and that sort of thing, and have this all tuned up. These ordinances are right here, and I present them for you, to you, to look at, ask questions, and hopefully recommend these, or vote to recommend these to the council. The first one is to an ordinance which basically allows us to become members of the cigarette board, and the second one, and this here's also the agreement, and it shows that we would be the 11th member of the board. The agreement with the board outlines all the points I just told you about, and after that will be the actual ordinance, which allows us to collect the tax. It's, again, long. It covers every eventuality, every possibility. But as I said, the Cigarette Tax Board even enforces, they even appoint agents which will visit all retailers and make sure that the dual stamp is on each pack of cigarettes. If they have some that are not, they violate them. They have to pay a fine, and I think it's a 10% penalty and 10% interest or something like that. They're authorized to carry weapons if they have to, just like a police officer. That's all in this ordinance. If you have more than 6 packs of cigarettes, or 6 cartons of cigarettes, that aren't stamped in your possession, they assume that you're there to sell them and you get violated. So even a private citizen with more than 6 cartons can be run afoul of this ordinance. So it, like I said, the attorneys wrote it, and it's very detailed. I'll be glad to try to answer any questions I can about it, but I've read it through about twice now. It's difficult reading because we're reading after an attorney, but I think it pretty much covers what we want to do. We will have to have a public hearing on both ordinances. My recommendation is that if you will approve this, we take it to the full council. You can do that at the workshop meeting, which is next week. And then from there, if the council were to approve it, schedule a public hearing and go from there.
So is it my understanding here in reading regarding the excise tax that you not only can tax greater than a pack of cigarettes, but you can also tax less than a pack of cigarettes. So you're talking about it's 2 different.
Well, the ordinance makes provisions for up to 40 cents per pack, but if you read the state code, they don't refer to a pack. They refer to 2 cents per cigarette, which works out to 40 cents a pack, $4 a carton. But yeah, they and the Accomack County, as I said, they are collecting one half a penny per cigarette.
Which, it blows my mind. I just cannot believe the county of Accomack is the one collecting the least of all of them.
Well, that's the executive director told me that himself. He said
Yeah.
of the 10 existing members, 9 of them are collecting the maximum Accomack County.
Have they started collecting yet, the county?
I believe they have.
They'll be back for more.
Well,
Of course they will.
and I believe Mr. Mason told me, and I read all of this, but I believe Mr. Mason told me he actually went to the tobacco companies and got a volume of sales in the county of Accomack. And once they got the volume of sales, it was very easy to calculate how much money they'd get from this. And they said, this is all we need, because I think they had originally proposed 40 cents. But when they saw the volume of sales, they said, we don't need that much money, so they scaled it back to what they needed, which I give them credit for.
They don't need that much money.
Well-
I personally, I would like to see us join the Chesapeake Bay Region Cigarette Tax Board, and I am in favor of executing the maximum of 40 cents. Robbie's coughing.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion moving forward to approve a 40% rate,
40 cents.
40-cent rate, and on each pack. And do we have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
And if I could, just to clarify that, and I think it can be all done in one motion. First thing is to recommend to council that we join the Chesapeake Bay Region Cigarette Tax Board. And the second would be to approve the cigarette tax ordinance as written with a rate of 40 cents per pack. Is that correct?
Yeah. And so I can make a motion to that just as the town manager presented, if we want to do it that way. I mean, is that what you want us to do?
Well, I just want to clarify the motion because
Oh, okay. All right, so we're good.
when they type the minutes up, it's much easier if
Okay.
it's clearly stated.
So to clarify things, we want a motion, first of all, to go with the Chesapeake Bay Region Cigarette Tax Boards. And on top of that, we have, if we can go ahead with a motion for that.
So moved.
Okay, we have it's moved and second, all in favor of that.
Aye.
Aye.
And secondly, as far as the tax, rate of 40 cents on each package, do we have a motion to accept that as well?
Yeah, I thought that was what we were, thought that was all
We
the
just
same
kind of
thing.
We kind of, we're just
Yeah,
reversed
I
that.
just restated the motion so it was
Yeah.
clear for
Okay.
Okay.
Kelly when she types the minutes, that's all. Okay.
So good?
Yes, sir.
Okay, next on,
I got one more question.
okay.
about that. Once this goes to council and if approved, does it come back to the ordinance committee to suggest where that money goes to?
I have that
Or
too.
can we decide on it as council as a whole
You can do either. I don't think it has to originate with the ordinance committee, but that is certainly something that you might want to look at and take some time to look at to see if you want to. And you don't have to dedicate it to any one thing. It's just going to go through the general fund unless you do allocate that to one particular or several purposes. That's totally up to you. But I don't know that it has to come back to ordinance. Now, the council may kick it back, but I don't know. It has to start.
So we could split that up among more than one thing as well, right?
Yes.
You could. I'll just say that, the more times you split it up, it's a little bit harder across the hall.
It's probably not gonna be a huge amount of revenue, I wouldn't think.
And I have asked the director of the NNPDC, he is actually, I gave him all the retail outlets that we could think of on the island, and once I gave them to him, he's working on trying to get me a total volume so we could see back how much tax this would be, but right now I have no idea.
I'll reserve where I think it should go until we all get together. Just my opinion of where I think it should go, I should say.
You have anything else, Bill?
I'm good.
Good. Okay, we're now going to move on to consider modification to the meals tax ordinance. Mr. Talbot.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, as you know, for the last few years, meals taxes have been budgeted at meals tax revenue, I should say, has been budgeted at a total of $110,000. Of that, we budget half of that to go to the Chamber of Commerce and half to go to the Center Authority, the CRCCA. As you know, the authority is no longer, so the center is being operated by the town, so that money I had requested budgetary is to put that money, keep that money set aside within the town and put it back into that building because we do need some things on there and we do need some money to operate. But in March of last year, we reached our budgetary revenue for meals tax, and at that time, when we reached that, I stopped contributing to the Chamber of Commerce because we had reached our budget, and that's all I was permitted to do budget-wise. I think we went over just a little bit. In any event, council eventually voted to allocate to distribute the rest of the meals tax for April, May, and June to the chamber, which we did after the fact. So in order for this not to be addressed again, or addressed every year, I should say, there's been a suggestion that we modify the meals tax ordinance. And if you look on the board here and in your packets, I have written that section of the ordinance as it reads. And in order to do this, and now, going back a little farther, the ordinance was written such that the meals tax was supposed to be, or the meals tax committee, which is appointed by the mayor, met on an annual basis, and the meals tax committee would say, or to satisfy the 10% reinvestment in tourism, the meals tax committee would recommend where to invest that money to satisfy that requirement. All right. The suggestion has been made that we make it permanently, instead of we don't meet or don't have the meals tax committee meeting anymore. We abolish that committee and permanently assign 5% of the meals tax collected to the Chamber of Commerce, and permanently dedicate the other 5% to operation of the Shintic Center, which is what we've done for the last, I think, 4 or 5 years. So there's no change in what's actually happening. It's just a mechanism by which we got there. I have rewritten the ordinance to reflect this. For some reason, the second part of this ordinance was a minimum of 5% shall be used for drainage or park and recreation related projects determined by the council each year, and I don't know when the last time that was done. So in keeping with what we've done for the last few years, I recrafted that part of the ordinance to read a minimum of 10% of the tax levied under the article shall be used to promote tourism. 5% of this tax collected shall be distributed to the Chincoteague Chamber of Commerce and 5% retained by the town for operation of the Chincoteague Center. Distributions will be made monthly based on the tax collected for that month. The Chamber of Commerce Executive Director will prepare an annual report for the council in February outlining the specific use of the distributed funds for the previous fiscal year. And that was another request by council, was to let's see where the chamber is spending that money annually, so we can monitor and see how well we are doing with this ordinance. And that is the only part of the I included the entire meals tax ordinance here, but that's the only part that anybody seemed to want to change.
That's a question. I have a question for Evelyn. Is that okay?
Yeah.
This what you just gave us tonight. The only thing that I would like to see in February is just like where you've got guide distribution, print media, all that. I would like to see an actual figure.
And I've done that in years past. I've done that.
Yeah, I'd like to see.
That.
Yeah, I know it says 70,170. You spent,
Right.
an actual. Okay, we spent. This amount, this actual figure right here to.
We have a chart of accounts that matches this.
Okay, yeah, I just like that's all
no
I would like to
problem.
see.
So, I guess, we're talking about to promote tourism. So is the town itself, are you coming up with some kind of guidance on how the center is going to promote tourism as well?
It's been asked of me to develop a strategic plan, which I've done. It's not a long one, but it is done, and I will present it to the council. I'll put it in the workshop meeting for next week. Okay. But yes, my understanding in the history of this, and the mayor's here, so he would know. My understanding in the history of this, back when meals tax was instituted, was the only way that it was concessions to getting it passed and established was that the restaurant owners requested that some of the money be put back into tourism to keep people coming, keep people interested. And that's when the meals tax committee was established, and for the purpose of saying where the money should go to reinvest in tourism. I think it was very easy and very wise to dedicate to Chamber of Commerce because they cover a broad spectrum of things that satisfy as promoting tourism, and the center certainly does as well. I mean, one of my goals is to make sure the center is used more locally than it has been in the past, and we will do that. But certainly, it certainly does attract some tourism as well. So.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
So I'll make a motion to recommend the council the ordinance as presented by the town manager. As he's written.
Okay.
I'll second that.
So a motion and a second to recommend to the council as written by Town Manager Tolbert. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Appreciate that. Next on the agenda is we have the consider modification of the noise ordinance. Town Manager Tolbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, there's been some questions concerning events from the last few months on how our noise ordinance compares to other locations, and is it adequate or not. Chief Fisher is here to answer any questions. I've asked him to be here and answer any questions on how this is enforced. He is extremely familiar with the noise ordinance and how it's enforced and where it's enforced and how it's actually technically done. So we have him to do that. The ordinance, and I've included the entire ordinance here, the ordinance is very specific, very detailed. It was written in '99. I think I know the attorney. I think you all know the attorney that did it. It is not like and I've read 14 other ordinances, some from the state of Virginia and some from states all up down the eastern seaboard. It's very similar to some of them, very similar actually to the county's ordinance, as you might expect. In fact, to make this a little easier, and I know actual state codes don't translate between state lines, but the level of decibels used generally does. So to make this a little easier, I've included a chart here for other localities and what their limits are for commercial and residential areas for day and night. And that nearly everyone uses the same criteria to separate their levels, and that is commercial and residential, day and night. There are a few, I think Ocean City is one of them, that actually have separate sections for restaurants and nightclubs. And they do give restaurants and nightclubs a little higher limitation. There's also one, and I believe that was Rehoboth. No. Nags Head, that you can buy a permit to exceed the limitations there. If you have a business and you want to be noisier, you can buy a permit to have a noisier establishment. But those are some of the anomalies. There were a few locations that had the same day and night criteria for their commercial districts, and I think that was Atlantic City, New Jersey, and Fairfax County, Virginia. They are both at 65 decibels for commercial operations day and night, so it doesn't change. But that's just to give you an example of how we compare with other localities, and I tried to be honest with you, to stay with coastal communities, and a lot of them that are in would have a major tourism economy.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it would be instructive to put some of the bigger places in there, which is why you see Atlantic City, New Jersey, and Miami Beach. If you look, Atlantic City, New Jersey is actually quieter than we are in some
Mm-hmm.
instances. And I thought that was telling, you know. Again, I looked through the state code. I could not, because I wanted to see what the state code's limitations were on decibel levels, and I cannot find any limitations in the state code as far as decibels. The things I found in the state code were exemptions for shooting ranges, and they had several sections on aircraft noise. But I could not find just a state ordinance which regulated noise in general. And there, as you might expect, OSHA has a lot of regulations on noise within a building, from machinery and that sort of thing, but that's kind of not what we're looking at. Miami Beach is a bit of an anomaly in that they don't use decibel levels. They use distance from the source. And they also have something unique in that I think we allow occurrence, Robbie, every 30 days. Every 30 days. So if you have 2 occurrences within 30 days, you get violated. The first one's a warning, right? The second one, you get a citation written. And I don't know what happens on the third one within 30 days. Same thing. So you get another citation. And if
30 days, you got 1 warning within that 30 days. If you violate it 5 times, then you got 4 tickets.
you got 4 tickets, and the tickets are $500.
Up to.
Up to $500. That is something I did read in state code, is you cannot exceed that $500.
Mm-hmm.
Miami Beach, if you look at it, first occurrence is $250. Next occurrence is $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $5,000. It maxes out at $5,000. But you can have an occurrence once an hour. If you tell them to turn it down, an hour later it's another occurrence. You know, they keep. But the interesting thing was that they don't use decibel meter or decibel levels. They use distance from the source. And in some instances, if it's audible within 100 feet, it's a violation. So I thought that's kind of unique. But as you can see, the vast majority of these 14 localities use decibels broken down into residential and commercial areas, and further broken down between day or night.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, it's the pleasure of the committee, whatever you'd like to recommend, or nothing at all.
Do Do we have a lot of complaints now?
I think this year so far, we might have had, actual complaints called into the police department, where an officer was called, I think maybe 4 or 5, I believe.
So, just because you don't have a complaint doesn't mean that they're not violating.
Oh, no.
Because if I can sit at home, I'm in the middle of the island, I can sit at home and I can hear, just for an example, Shingatiki, Rope Walk, you know, it's coming from that area. I can understand every word that's being said. I can only imagine what it's like for the people next door. But the only way you can go to them is if you get an actual complaint, right? You can't just ride by there and say, hey, this is too loud, yourself.
Have to have a victim.
You have to have a what?
Victim.
A victim.
And that's the same, that noise is under environment section in our code. And it's actually, further, it's under the nuisance article. And correct me if I'm wrong, Robbie, but we don't do anything with nuisances unless somebody complains. If there's a complaint on a nuisance, then the police department follows up on it. If there's no complaint, and there are 11 or 12 enumerated nuisances in the code, something like that, and the noise is a separate nuisance all by itself.
I think my only problem with that is that if you have to have somebody, a victim of it, they're still breaking the law if they're too loud.
And see, part of, the way the ordinance is written, when a person complains, we have to go to their property and get the closest, say, corner of their structure, of their residence, to the noise source. So when we go there, a lot of times, especially if the wind's blowing, let's say the wind's blowing north, you can hear it all the way up North Main Street by the wind, but 2 doors down on the south, you're not gonna be illegal.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of areas on here where the residential is almost butting against commercial. And that's,
Problematic.
yeah.
Are we allowed to change this ordinance to be that if Robbie's guys are just riding and they think it's too loud, they can stop and take a reading?
I'm going to tell you, I don't know the exact answer to that. I know exactly what you're saying because I can go outside of my house nights and hear this one or that one or that there. I'll say this too, there's a lot, most of these codes had at least a dozen exceptions to this. Nonprofits, schools, things like that.
Right.
Nearly all of them exempted legally operating industrial businesses or commercial businesses for truck noise and things like that. Some of them exempted dumpster trucks and things like that from this ordinance. The correct answer to that is I'm not sure. I can find out, but if I know what you're thinking on how you want to change this, I can get the answer.
My other question would be for Robbie. It's got daylight hours or daytime hours, 7 a.m. to 12 a.m. midnight. Are most of the complaints coming after that?
Yes. Yes, we've had a few, especially this year. Earlier than that, matter of fact, the last one that I know of was actually earlier, and it was right at the 70 level. So it was not illegal. However, if we get somebody that close, we do go and tell them. Because most times with bands and stuff, they're known to turn it up as the night goes on.
Yeah. So my thinking is at 12 o'clock, midnight, they don't necessarily have to cut the music off, but they got to come down to that level, right?
Right.
And is there a cutoff time for bands or anything? Do we have
Bars
anything?
have to close at 2. So
Yeah.
most of the time, the bands will usually stop at
Yeah.
1:30.
Yeah.
And that's another thing too is, this is mostly, at least from what we've had since I've been here, it's outside bands.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we don't have a lot of inside bands anymore. Maybe Steamers might have one every now and again, in the wintertime. but we usually don't hear much from them, from the ones inside, it's mostly outside.
I can hear KOA often as well when they
I
have.
can too.
Oh,
It's, it's like a direct line for some reason in my house.
I will say too that reading these, I read all 14 ordinances, and several of them had requirements for inside noise, that they soundproof the exterior walls so it didn't travel outside the door.
Well, it looks like to me, commercial nighttime, outside of the dance halls and nightclub, which would be an inside thing, that we are at or lower than these other ones. Daytime commercial, we are higher than some, a little bit lower than others.
Again, daytime's considered until midnight.
Right.
You can also, I saw nothing in this code that said you could not change the hours as well.
You can't change the hours, but you can change the decibel level.
I think you can change either. I saw nothing in code that would prevent you from changing hours or the decibel level. And if you look at the other, just look at the other localities in the state of Virginia, you've got Hanover, Fairfax, Colonial Beach, Virginia Beach. They have different decibels, and I will tell you, after reading their ordinances, nearly everybody has a different opinion of what day and night is.
Well, I'm looking here at Colonial Beach, Virginia. Their commercial day, which goes up to midnight, is 90.
Well, let me back up. Those hours that are in there are only for the town of Chincoteague. I didn't put
okay,
those hours
okay.
on everybody because everybody's was a little different.
Okay, gotcha.
And I want to say, I could be wrong, I think you did but I thought at one time, years ago, Ocean City had in their ordinance that they couldn't have any outside music after a certain time. I'm not sure if they still do, if they've changed it up now.
That's certainly something to look at as well.
I guess my feeling is you have to go by the number of complaints you get. I mean, you're talking about 5 complaints. I mean, the music I hear where I live, it's not keeping me up at night. I mean, I can hear it. It's not keeping me up at night, but I have to think about those people that are living 2, 3, 4 blocks closer, too. It would definitely keep them up at night. I mean, are we here talking about this because there's been an issue, or there might be issues to come?
I had a few members of council said we should address the noise ordinance because of some earlier complaints this summer. And we
Okay.
had some last summer as well.
Okay.
Again, nobody's told me we want to do this or we want to do that, but we're just reviewing the ordinance now, and I thought it would be helpful to see what everybody else was doing. So it's why I compiled this list.
And what I was speaking on a while ago is as far as the proximity, even commercial. For instance, if you got this outside group playing and banging on music late at night and they're next to 2 motels, you know, it could affect that as well. I'm not sure if you've had any, is any of that to your knowledge been, yeah. I know it's been mentioned to me, but it's just me.
Apparently, a few years ago, someone got on our garbage contractor, solid waste contractor, because we don't let them start until 7. And one of the reasons for that, their director of operations called me the other day and he said, you know, we'd really like to come and empty dumpsters earlier than that, and we'd get that truck on and off the island before traffic got bad in the middle of the summer. That would be a big help to us and should help you all as well by reducing traffic. And he said, and before noise was an issue, and I can attest to that because one of the businesses next to my house, which was also my business at the time, those trucks would dump those dumpsters at 5 a.m. and those metal lids closed, and it was, I mean, it would wake up the neighborhood. But he told me that he said, we are investing in some fiberglass dumpsters that are gonna be much quieter. And he wanted to know if he could start bringing his trucks on, those dumpster trucks on early. I said, well, why don't we take a look at it when you get them, we'll see what they're like and, go from there. So we're gonna try that, because it would be helpful to both of us to do that earlier, get them off the aisle. But apparently they had been told in the past, because it was so noisy, that they couldn't do it until 7 p.m.
It was, we had several complaints. This was before I had came back with you, when I was here before. We had several complaints because they would go to the business and,
But it will,
hotel or
it
something next to them, and they took up them big ones over top.
Mm-hmm.
And it
Never
changed.
really that I know of had complaints about the little, the small residential trash can. It was just the commercial trash.
Sure.
So we still, as far as construction noises and stuff, and what we have written here is Monday through Saturday inclusive. Is that still?
Yes.
Okay.
7 a.m., correct?
7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Well, I'm gonna expand on that. Did at one time, we, the town, I wasn't on council then, but did we give permission for commercial construction to happen on Sundays if there was an
Yes.
issue for them getting
It's in the ordinance.
done?
Yeah, special situations and
Yeah.
stuff,
They'd have to prove like a hardship
Right.
of some type to the town manager, and then he can sign off on it.
I have not, I think I've signed off on one since I've been here,
Right.
yeah. But I've also witnessed several operations that didn't bother calling.
So is this something, do you have anything, Bruce? Is this something we want to further investigate or leave as is, or?
I mean, everything I'm looking at looks like we kind of fall
I mean, you had
right with the other ones.
Guess
Nag's
yours-
Head is kind of down.
Huh?
Nag's
Mhm.
Head,
Yeah,
yeah, they're kind of down.
yeah, they're low.
They also have a specific permit that allows you to go up to 80 on the
Yeah.
weekends.
Mhm.
It's
It's
just
just very
ridiculous.
loud.
I wonder how many they have of those.
And that's in their code. Who knows if it's enforced or if it's
Yeah.
just one of these things that's not done anymore.
Band on the beach, or, because all the houses are close to the beach or
I
whatever.
might also add, every time I do this search through other municipalities' codes, and here you see 14 of them, including the town of Chincoteague. But of the 13 other ones that I looked at, all but 2 of those use Municode for their ordinance. And ours will be out in the next few weeks. Ours will be live online in the next few weeks. I've already approved the draft and everything, so we will follow. And it is extremely easy to search something on Municode. When I see Municode come up on Google for a municipality, I click on that, go to their search bar, type in noise, up comes their noise ordinance, just like that. It's very simple, so I'm looking forward to being able to search our code.
And just looking at ordinances in general, just so quick,
And then it's very easy to print, it's very easy to store them, manipulate them once you got them there, so.
yeah.
I guess if we have more complaints, we can review it further, but
Okay. Nothing else on noise ordinance? And I believe that was it. Does anybody else have anything to offer?
I have a question. I'm going to address it to Chief Fisher.
Yeah.
As our ordinances go, is your department the responsible party for enforcing?
That's, yes, and some of it falls to Mark, and some of it falls to our department. So it's
Mhm.
kind of a split there.
Mm-hmm.
If it's anything that, criminally related, then it's up to us.
Mm-hmm.
If it's something more building related or something like that, that goes to him.
Okay.
And that sort of mirrors what the state does. If you look at the state, they have the state code and then they have the administrative code. And it's we kind of divide it like that. Criminal goes to him, administrative stuff goes to Mark.
Which for me goes back to, you have to have a victim, like you said. I see a lot of ordinances out there every day that are being not adhered to, pertaining to grass or what have you. Who, and I'm not talking about the length of the grass. I mean, recently, last year, we put out the ordinance that you can't leave grass in the road. I see a lot of that. You know, who do you,
That would be Mark.
Well, it could be more, but that could be us too, you know, because that grass could cause an accident.
exactly,
You know, so.
That's some motorcycles.
Yeah, but again, you know, it comes down to if we're made aware of it, you know, if we're not, you know, we're out here riding, but we don't ride on, you know, every street, you know, all the time, so, you know, it could be something that, you know, I biased, you know, and when we finally seen it, of course, we cut the grass, it's gone.
yeah.
You know, we may go up there to the, you know, to the house and say, hey, you know, and we say, oh, well, I had, you know, somebody cut my grass, we need to tell the person that cut the grass, not throw it in the road, you know.
I'll say this, when I was in my other job, my crew was cutting in high school, and police officers stopped and told them they cannot throw grass in the road. They come back and complain to me, I said, that's right, you can't go up there and throw grass in the road, don't do
And
that.
that's not just an ordinance, that's state law.
Yeah.
But that was a police officer who did that day.
And how about a vehicle? A vehicle that's in somebody's yard, been there 3 years with an expired registration.
That would be Mark.
That's Mark.
And we also have an ordinance on the books about accumulation.
That's Mark.
Okay.
And let me say this as well, and since I've been here and keep an eye on this every day, it really, I can't stress how much it helps if someone calls and reports it. And nobody wants to be the bad guy and say, hey, so-and-so is doing this, but if just a phone call or an email or a text or something say, by the way, at this location on Depot Road, there's grass in the road, or, you know, there's 3 old cars or something like that, we will go and look after it and do it. Mark is one guy, but when he sees stuff, he is on it. When I see stuff, he and I talk several times a day. If I see something over the weekend, I'll say, Mark, this dress or this dress, you know, we've got tall grass, or this dress, we've got 2 old cars, whatever. He's on it. I mean, he does it immediately. It doesn't sit. So it's not for lack of not doing it. It's just, you can't be everywhere at once.
I don't know about the rest of the council that's sitting here, but I get a lot of people will call me or text me or see me on the street and say, hey, this, and this. All right, I'll look into it. You know, yeah,
Refer them to me.
yeah,
take
I'll
care
look into it. But they'll not want to call in to you or Robbie or whatever. No, you take care of it, you know? And I try, and I'm sure all the rest of us do too. Y'all get that too? A lot of people, they don't wanna call themselves, they don't, you know.
And I'll say this too, going back to the noise thing, like I said, I read all 14 of these ordinances. Some of them have a NCR, some of them have several NCRs, noise control officers that actually go out and ride around at night and police that sort of thing. They don't wait on a complaint, so, but you know, that's,
And
we're a small place.
I kinda think that's why you only have 5 complaints
Yeah,
with noise, because no differently what they're, just like when they come up to you on the street,
yeah,
they don't wanna be the one necessarily
Right.
to
yeah.
complain, but it's a problem.
This, if anything with that noise ordinance, what I would like to see is if Robbie's guys are out riding and they hear something that they feel might be a little loud, go ahead and check it. And if it's, you know, not right, then go to the person. That's what I would like to see. I think you might
Yeah,
cut down on some more
As I
stuff.
stated the other night, I know that the judge was the one that had told us before, you know, that, hey, you all are right anyway, you're getting paid to be out, you know, they're not bothering us. The noise is not bothering us, that's why he wanted a victim.
But it's bothering the people that you are protecting and serving.
Right.
And if you're there to enforce other laws,
I can't.
So,
I know,
I'm
but
not gonna argue with the judge.
I'm just, I know that.
so is it worth finding out that if we are able to do that?
Yes.
Enable law enforcement to do that?
Yeah,
Because if they are, then we may want to make a change to the ordinance.
yeah.
Well, we've got,
That's on my list.
Okay.
we've got something in here, getting back to the noise, called injunctive relief. I'm not sure if you read that, Mike, but that gives
Yeah.
you the authority to converse with the circuit court. Is that
Injunctive
correct?
relief, meaning we can go to court.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Circuit court.
circuit court, right.
We'll find that out. And
Okay.
Admittedly, and I spent several hours looking at noise ordinances and looking through the state code, and I'll be the first one to tell you, it's not as simple to find as you might think. Google does it, and you put me onto this, Google does a better job than our own
Well, to
system.
me, this is the one that we want to talk to the judges. Because they're the ones that's gonna say yes or no,
Right.
you know. I doubt, there's anything in the state that says, you know, in the state code that says you have to have a victim. But that's simply a judge's, you know, preference.
It might be one judge's preference, but not another one.
Very well.
You don't never know.
Yes.
Okay.
And I can take care of that, find that.
Can't see your overall expression with the.
No, sorry.
These eyes.
Okay, anybody else have anything? Denise?
Yes, sir. I've thought enough.
Bill?
Nope.
Okay, that being said, do we have a motion to close? or
Motion
adjourn?
to adjourn.
Got a motion and a second to adjourn, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.